Hello everyone. So my wife and I have this 2018 377 RLBH Jayco Northpoint fifth wheel, and we really love it. One of the places that we go camping is Assateague Island, and Assateague Island in Maryland does not have any hookups on their campsites, so it's dry camping. In the past, we used a Honda 2000 watt suitcase generator, which we had to run quite often during the day and kind of gets to be a little bit of a pain. We have a residential refrigerator in the camper, so we got to keep the batteries charged up. So we decided to start checking on solar for the camper to at least limit the number of times we have to use a generator. So Jayco does pre-wire most of their units, as far as I know, for solar, and Go Power is who provides the roughing equipment and supplies to Jayco. So we'll show you that. The solar controller in the storage compartment here on this unit, they have a plate here for the pre-wire, and this is actually a template to cut through this panel to mount the solar controller, and supposedly I'll find out when I get the hole cut out. The wire from the roof, which is already running the camper, is in behind here, and I should find a coil of wire in behind here that I'll splice into with the solar controller. So that's in that compartment. And then also as part of the pre-wire, and I need to verify, but all the electrical components for the battery, this is the two batteries that are currently in, all the electrical charging components for that are up in behind here. If you take all your stuff out of this compartment and look up over top of this storage box, it appears that there's already a 30 amp breaker installed for as part of the pre-wire for the solar. So I have to verify that as we get farther into that. And then over here on the side in the utility compartment, they do wire for a 20 amp a carry-out solar panel. So if you have a carry-out panel, you set it on the ground and you just plug it right into this plug. Now this is limited to 20 amp, and the other controller is going to be at 30 amp, so you can have more panels. Disadvantage to that is we had a carry-out solar panel at one point, a Harbor Freight, and not long after we got it, I sat it out to see what it would do, and the wind blew it over and cracked it and broke it and ruined it. So that's why we didn't really want to go with a carry-out this time. We preferred a hard-mounted. So we're going to move from here into the garage, and I'll show you the kit that we actually got to install. So since the Jayco had already wired the camper with the Go Power components, we decided to stick with Go Power. I checked out some other panels online, and seemed to be somewhat similar, a little less money maybe, but the Go Power seemed to have a pretty good solid panel and controller, and we just decided to stick with that. We ordered it through Amazon. Since we had Prime on Amazon, shipping was free, and the price was pretty comparable to other places we found, just within a dollar or two. So we got the basic Overlander kit. It's 190 watt panel, the controller and all the hardware I'll show you later. The reason we got this particular setup was this controller will handle up to 2 more panels, from what I can tell. So if we find that this single panel isn't enough, we'll probably add another one. I'm not sure if we're going to ever add the third or not, since we really only have this one trip a year that we do dry camping. Maybe in the future we'll do more, but right now we only have a couple days at Assateague. So everything comes in this one box. UPS delivered it right to our door. Inside the box, you have the panel itself. And this panel measures roughly 30 inches wide by, I think it's 59 inches long. Very important that you save this packaging. The panel itself comes in its own separate box inside of the big box, and you actually want to keep this because a solar panel, as soon as you take it out in the sun, it's starting to generate electricity. So you want to keep it covered up so as you're making connections and doing your work, you're not working with a hot panel. So one of these I'm going to let on the panel itself, on the front, and I'll probably tape it on so when I carry it out, it doesn't fall off. And the other one I'm actually going to use as a template to take up on the roof of the camper so I can judge where I want to put the panel, because this box is pretty much exactly the same size as the panel. So I'll lay it out on the roof and figure out where we want to mount it. So the other components that are in the box, they give you a couple feet of wire, which actually we're not going to use since the camper was already pre-wired. We don't have to use this. Now if we add other panels later on, I may try and get ends for this and try and use this wire to tie in the other panels. Go Power gives you a 30 amp fuse. However, like I had said, I believe that there's already a 30 amp breaker installed by Jayco, so that I have to verify. You get a couple packs of hardware. This is some clamps and zip ties and end connectors. These are the screws that you'll screw into the roof. I believe they're stainless steel screws. From the sheen on them, they look like they are. If I didn't think they were stainless, I would use stainless on the roof. I don't want anything up there that's going to rust. A couple nuts and bolts. They give you locking nuts. Have a little neoprene insert in so they stay locked tight. These are the aluminum brackets that'll get attached to the back of the panel to fasten it to the roof. You have an installation manual, and this is the solar controller. Not real big, about an inch and a quarter deep. And this is what will get mounted where that plate was in the storage compartment on the camper. Kind of neat. I don't know if we'll ever use it or not, but it does have a USB port right here to charge things up. And then of course you get your manual for the solar controller. So next we're going to go out on the roof of the camper and lay things out, try and figure out where the trusses are and what we need to do to mount the panel. Alright, so here we are up on the roof of the fifth wheel, and like I said, this is a big fifth wheel, so there's a lot of real estate up here to be able to mount a panel. This is the roof connection that Jayco installs as part of the pre-wire, so that's where our wires from the panel will hook in, and that's all already wired down through the unit down to the solar controller. So I think I brought one of the boxes up here. I'm going to lay it out so we can kind of see how things are going to fit. And what I decided was that I'm going to put this first panel here. You can see it's right close to the pre-wire point. And then if we do a second panel, I have plenty of room here on the other side to put the second panel. All right, so now that we decided roughly where we're going to put the panel, I'm going to move this aside. Now I have to find the roof trusses, and luckily I was able to see one here through the rubber. I can actually see the joint in the plywood, so you can kind of feel it. Another thing that I did was I tried to use a stud finder and kind of had mixed results with a stud finder. But what I did was I kind of walked up here, and you can feel like right there, my left and right foot, it's spongy, but when I get here to the middle, it gets solid. So I know that joint in the plywood, and normally you would make a joint in the plywood over top of a truss. So what I did was I marked that with a crayon. You can kind of see the orange marks here. I didn't make them real dark. So I just marked that with a crayon. And then I kept feeling here. I think there's probably one here in the middle, and then I hit one right here, and that kind of makes sense because it's right past the roof vent is here. So I think they probably have one on each side of that roof vent. So here again, I marked that in crayon. I'm not sure if you can see the orange marks there in the roof or not. So now the next thing that I did was I relayed the panel box exactly where I wanted it. And then I marked the sides of the box where it lined up with the trusses. And I because the roof is curved up here, the sides are a little bit, not much. I want you to mount it at 4 locations, and you can see here where, again, where the, get out of the sun there, you can see how that all lined up. All right, so now we're going to go down back off the roof again and get the panel prepped to be brought back up top here. All right, so we're back in the shop here, and you can see what I did. I actually taped one of those box halves to the panel, and that'll stay on there till the end, till we're done with our installation. You know, for a couple of reasons. One, to protect the panel, to protect the face. You can see I have it laying here on the trussels on the face, and then also because of the sun and the power issues. So next step here, I took the other half of the box, the one that we had up on the roof as a template, and I'm going to lay that on top here again. And I'm going to mark where the marks that I put on the roof where the trusses were. I'm going to transfer that mark down onto the panel here. So I did that at all 4 points, and actually here I've already pre-drilled a hole, and I'll show you how we did that later. But transferred that mark down, slide the box over. Did the same thing here, transferred that down to the aluminum frame of the panel. So that's it for this template. Oh, and the other important thing was, when I did the template up on the roof, I marked which side. Here you can see it says mid. That meant that side of the template went towards the middle of the camper. You don't want to reverse the template when you bring it down here, or your mounting brackets aren't going to be at the right spot. So we're going to get rid of that template. And then the next thing I did, Go Power wants you to use, there's several holes drilled in the frame. This was a factory drilled hole, and they have some other ones here in the middle, and then this last one here. Go Power wants you to use the 4 outside holes, the ones closest to the ends of the panel, to mount it. So this one over here, you can see the black mark that we put on from our template. So when we hold our bracket on, and I want that bracket centered on that mark, so I'm going to hold that centered. You see here, this hole, they give you a little bit of adjustment to slide it one way or the other. But here we'll actually be able to use the factory holes because it's within the slotted section here. Now when we get down to the other end though, when we hold it on our mark, you see how the factory hole is a little too far away. It's not within our slot. So this is actually the back of the panel towards the back of the camper. So I don't feel that the wind will affect it quite as much as the front. The front we are mounting where Go Power wanted us to. But the back I don't think is quite as big of a deal. So I'm actually going to go ahead and drill a new hole. So I want the bracket. So I can mount the bracket exactly where we want to put it. Now, roof sheathing, I think Jayco uses a 3/8 inch roof sheathing, if I remember correctly from when we bought it. However, Go Power wants you to fasten through a minimum of a 1/2 inch. So that's why it's important that we find those trusses and get our brackets on those trusses. So to drill these holes, the big problem here is there's a little bit of a gap here between the aluminum frame and the back of the actual solar panel. But you certainly don't want to be drilling here and run your drill bit down through your panel, because now you've just ruined it. So what I did, I used a I made myself a little shield here. Just took a scrap piece of plywood, and I actually laid a rag down first up under the edge, and then I put my scrap piece of plywood on here. Now when I drill, if I slip through, you know, I was very careful doing the drilling, but if I had slipped through, I would have hit the piece of plywood before it went into the back of the panel. All right, so we have all those holes. We had to re-drill 2 holes, and the other 2 we're going to use from the factory. So our next step is to get the brackets mounted. So the brackets are mounted. Got all our bolts tightened up. I did drill an extra hole here. The roof attachment for the wires is going to end up being right about here. So what I did was I actually drilled an extra hole through the aluminum frame, and after I get my wires hooked up, that gives me somewhere to put a zip tie through to secure these wires. All right, next step is to take the panel out on the roof, and we're going to get it fastened to the roof. And then up front here is the entry point, the power connection on the roof. So that's right within range there. The wires that were on the solar panel are going to be long enough to hook directly into that. All right, so next step's going to be to do some cleaning, and then we'll be ready to screw the panel down. Okay, got the panel all lined back up again, got the spots cleaned up where the brackets are going to be, and if you notice there, I put a little bit of sealant underneath the brackets. You can see it coming up through the holes. Did the same thing here. So I'm going to screw down this side first, and then I'll go over and screw down the other side, and then I'll come back around and put lap sealant over top the whole bracket. Okay, got that all screwed down, all 4 corners. Kind of see there how the sealant squeezed out all around from the bracket, which is great. I'm going to add a little more sealant over the top, and that should be up here. Notice I am not hooking up the wires yet until I get the controller installed down below. So even though the cover's still on, I'm going to wait a little bit to hook those wires up. I'll just do that as the last thing. Okay, there you go. Got that all sealed up. All 4 corners. I'm probably going to wait until after I take the cardboard cover off. I'd like to maybe get a little more sealant up around the back of the brackets. That's a little harder to get to. And I think I can do it a little better after the cardboard's gone. So next step is mounting the controller. All right, we're inside the storage compartment here, and this is where Jayco mounted the plate template for the solar controller. So that was screwed on here. Now this doesn't seem really like a template. It's just a piece of aluminum, and they have the outline drawn on it, but I'm not exactly sure how you can use this unless you peel that off. I'm not sure. So what I did, I just drew on, I kind of made my own template with a block of wood, and drew on here my cutout size, and here's the actual controller. So that's going to be mounted like this. So I felt in behind here, I can't feel any wires, but I certainly want to be careful when I cut that I don't go too deep and hit something that might be behind there. So I am going to use my oscillating saw and get that cut open. Okay, so we got the hole cut open. I'm just trying to feel here. Not feeling any wires yet. So these kind of look like it. One would have thought they would have been marked. They are 8-gauge wires, and it's a red and white one, although that's pretty common for the rest of the trailer. But the gauge seems to be right. And I don't feel anything else in here. So, I guess the only way to be sure is I'm going to have to cut them and or I can find my tone generator and trace them out, make sure these are the ones going up to the roof. So the red and white wire that we found in here was the correct wire. I was able to take this bottom panel off and reach up in, and I actually found a larger coil of wire hanging in behind here, and it did have a tag on it that said it was part of the solar prep package. So I got that all pulled out, and to verify what was going on, I actually took the red and black wire that came with the panel and plugged it into the plugs up on the roof and brought them down over the side of the camper here. And then I used my voltmeter on continuity and determined that these two wires go up to the roof because I had continuity between here. And then I set it to voltage, and these are hot. This one here is hot. The red one is hot, and the white one is the ground. So I know these go up to the battery compartment, and it also tells me that they're hooked up to the battery. So I will need to make sure that there's a breaker in between. Go Power says it needs to have a 30 amp breaker in, which I do believe is there, and I'll show some pictures of that later. So I'm going to trim these wires up and get them connected here to the solar controller and get this all mounted, and then we'll be done in here. So now we have all of our wires hooked up to the controller here. First two are to the battery, and that's actually the primary battery. That's kind of nice here on the controller. If you have a second bank of batteries, they give you connections here to hook a second bank of batteries up. Center two are going up to the solar panel. So we're going to get this installed. I have it bundled together here so these wires aren't dangling around on their own. We'll get this screwed into place, get this panel all back together, and then the next thing that I want to do is check and make sure that that breaker was installed as part of the prep package. And then we'll be ready to go up on the roof and get the batteries plugged, or get the panels plugged in, and see if we're making power. Another thing is, some of what I was reading online, they weren't sure about the gauge of the wire. This is number 8 wire that was part of the pre-wire package, so they do have a pretty decent sized gauge wire already installed. Okay, so controller installation is complete. We have it all programmed. We have the Bluetooth app installed on our phone. So even though this controller now is down here in the storage compartment, we'll be able to fully control it from anywhere in the camper, since it is an app that's available to download. Alright, so next thing we're going to do is make sure that 30 amp breaker is installed, and then we're going to go back up on the roof and get the panel hooked up. Okay, so I'm in the compartment in the front of the fifth wheel, looking in. This is the box that's around the batteries, which are in from the front. These are all the connections to the battery. I see 2 good candidates for that number 8 wire coming over from the solar controller, and both of them go through breakers before they get fed into the battery. So I'm going to assume that there's a 30 amp breaker in line there. I mean, I also know that there's not any wires going hot right directly to the battery cables here. Everything that's connecting the battery cables is on a breaker. So I believe that that was installed. And we currently have the 2 flooded cell regular batteries that came with the camper. I would imagine at some point we're going to switch them over to either a lithium ion or something different when they go bad. That's probably going to be our next upgrade to this. I've unplugged the camper from shore power, and we're going to get that panel hooked up, and we're just going to do a little experiment here and see if the solar panel can keep after. The refrigerator's turned on, freezer's turned on, and we're just going to see what it does with that single panel and then make a decision if we need the second panel. Okay, so connection's been made. Took the cover off. Just checked the app and we're making electric. So I'm going to back up here a little bit so you can get a better view of it. So we're going to let it unplugged here for a day or two and see if the panel can keep after, and then decide on a second panel. But other than that, that completes the installation. Have a good day.